transparency, and news with liability. This is Balita at Kasaysayan News. Good morning, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. It's Thursday, November 16, 2023, and this is Balita at Kasaysayan, nakatutok sa katotohanan ng mga pangyayari sa lipunan, bringing you the snippets of the history, surely without bias and revision.
We are your anchors, Angelo Haniel, bringing you the hottest, the freshest, and the most controversial news around the world.
Land reform refers to a wide variety of programs and measures usually by the government to bring about more effective control and use of the land for the benefit of the community. Land reform generally comprises the takeover of the land by the state from big landlords with compensation and transfer it to small farmers or landless workers. It is aimed at changing the agrarian structure to bring equity and to increase productivity. The structure includes both the relationship of man to his land and man's relationship with others, tenant and landlord. For further details, we have our reporter Chloe Lopez and Alexis Castillo. Chloe and Alexis, kindly update our viewers.
Agrarian reform is more complex. Along with the land reform, it also includes the measures to modernize the agricultural practices and improve the living conditions of everyone within the entire agrarian community. It includes various supports to agricultural education, the establishment of cooperatives, development of institutions to provide agricultural credit and other inputs, processing and marketing of agricultural produce and establishment of agro-based industries and others. The desire to obtain social justice and full development of dignity of man within the given situations of land reform has gained a great importance across the years in many countries of the world, especially in agricultural countries. One of the effects of colonizing periods was concentration of land holdings in the hands of the law. These few people from whom they can call land courts or caciques have had tremendous influence in the social and economic life of the nation that they had been able to dedicate to their dependents, the tenants of their families to such matters as whom to vote for political elections. They have also influenced political actions in various ways in order to maintain the status of queen. The history of land reform started at the beginning of pre-Spanish era. Before the Spaniards came to the Philippines, the Filipino social system was feudal, like a feudalistic system in medieval Europe. A warrior class existed bound by the fealty to a warlord. This class lived on the labor of serfs and slaves, but exchange. This warrior class protected them and exercised a ready, though rough, kind of justice.
Within the Filipino social structure, the datos chiefs comprise the nobility of Maharlikas. Then there are the Timawas, the freemen, followed by the aliping namamahay, the serfs, and the aliping sagigilid, the slaves. The freeborn did not pay the tributes of taxes to the datu, but were bound to follow him to war. They provided their own weapons, gears, man and cars when they set a sail, built their houses, and planted their rice field. The serfs served his master or lord, who may be a datu or someone else who is Maharlika, and tilled his land. Both masters and serfs equally divided to produce off their land. They had houses of their own, maintained private property, and passed this on their children as legacy. They are also allowed the free disposable of their chattels, movable personal properties, and their lands. The serfs correspond to tenant of late 19th century Spanish era. The slaves served the lord or master in both house and farm. They were allowed to share of the harvest, but they were their master's property. Thus, they could be sold, particularly those captured in wars or born reared as farmlands. In substances economy of early Filipino, money was unknown, and rice served as a medium exchange.
During the Spanish era, lands were divided and granted to encourage Spanish settlers or reward soldiers who served the crown. These were called encomiendas. The conditions of this grant state that the encomendero must defend his encomienda from external attack, maintain peace and order within, and support the missionaries. In consideration of these services, the encomendero acquired the right to collect tribute from the Indios in the amount and form determined by the royal government. The encomienda system was originally established more for the benefit of the natives than of the encomenderos. Thus, the latter could not be called lords because they were considered protectors, advocates, and tutors of the natives. The system, however, generated into abuse of power by the encomenderos. The tributes they were authorized to collect soon became land rents, and the people living within the boundaries of the encomienda became tenants. The encomenderos became the first group of hacenderos in the country. Meanwhile, the colonial government took the place of the datus. The datu was now called cabeza de barangay, but it was the proprietors of the estates who held the real power in the barangay or community. There were 4 classes of estate proprietors in the Philippines during the Spanish period. First, the religious orders Dominican and Agustinian. Second, the Spanish Peninsulars. Third, the Criollos and Mestizos. And lastly, the native principals. The Dominican friars leased their lands to both the natives and mestizos, who became known as inquilinos. Each inquilino paid a fixed ground rent for the area he cultivated, and the estate owner was not allowed to lease the land to others unless the incumbent leaseholder failed to pay the rent for 2 consecutive years. However, the inquilinos abused this policy by disposing of the lands if they owned them. They sold their interest in them or mortgaged to wealthy takers or subleased them at rents higher than what they themselves paid. Thus, by being inquilinos, they earned more than the estate owners without doing virtually any work. This became the root of a system in which native agricultural entrepreneurs that tilled and cleared the land with the aid of tenants whom they hired on a sharecropping basis had to lease the land. In time, the system evolved a set of practices that soon began to exploit the tenant tillers. Although Spanish authorities were aware of these pernicious practices, no effective measures were made in spite of 2 royal decrees issued in 1880 and 1184, urging landholders to secure titles. Under these decrees, the government granted a term of 1 year within which claims for free titles were to be filed. But because the large majority of peasants either did not understand the law or found the procedure too complicated and alien to tradition, only a few took advantage of the offer. Those few were mostly of the cacique class who claimed more lands than they actually had a right to. As a result, the actual tillers were driven out of their land or forced to become tenants of the caciques. Spanish land practices came to a halt with the outbreak of the Philippine Revolution when Spanish landowners started to sell off their lands, as brought about by the power shift in government where Spain was on a losing side against the Filipinos, who had declared their independence in 1898, and the Americans who were insisting to stay. After that, The first Philippine Republic, 1899 to 1901, was established on January of 1899. The government of President Emilio Aguinaldo declared its intention to confiscate large estates, especially the so-called friar lands. The declaration was contained in the Malolos Constitution. All the lands, buildings, and other properties belonging to the religious corporations in these islands shall be understood to have been restored to the Filipino state. However, as the republic was short-lived, Aguinaldo's plan was never implemented.
Thank you, Chloe and Alexis. Moving on to the next news. During the American era, several laws were passed to regulate and improve land tenure. Among the significant legislative pieces were established. For further details, we have our reporter, Clarence Dawson, with us. Kindly tell us more about the relevant legislative pieces.
At the start of the American era, some 400,000 native farmers were without titles because of the defective land system rooted in Spanish institutions and of the farmers' ignorance of various laws. The situation was aggravated by the absence of records of issued titles and accurate land surveys. Land disputes began and agrarian troubles worsened. To remedy the problem, the Americans introduced the torrent system of land registrations, whereby government purchase title were granted only after the completion of a survey and land ownership had been proven in court. This, however, did not solve the problem completely. As with the Spanish system, the majority of the farmers did not avail of the government's offer. Either they were not aware of the law, or if they did, they could not pay the survey costs and other fees required in applying for a torrents title. As for the prior lands, even American authorities could not touch them, as they were covered by a valid land titles issued during the Spanish era. Furthermore, the Treaty of Paris of 1898 found the U.S. government to protect the property interests of religious orders. The best solution offered for such conditions was the outright purchase of the lands. By 1919, about 69% of all prior lands had been bought and disposed of by the U.S. civil government of the Philippines.
Thank you for updating us, Clarence. Next news is Manuel Quezon continues to improve existing laws in the Commonwealth. We have Angeline Salvador. Please give us the details.
By the time the Commonwealth was established under Manuel L. Quezon, the malingering the problem of land tenure relationship had already given cause to armed discontent among oppressed tenants of estates. Pedro Calosa spearheaded the so-called Colorum Revolt in Tayug, Pangasinan in 1931, and 4 years later, Benigno Ramos mounted the Sakdal Revolt in Cabuyao, Laguna. In response to the spreading unrest, Quezon championed the tenants' plight and faced the agrarian crisis squarely by implementing a program of social justice. During his administration, Quezon improved and strengthened existing laws on land tenure by giving more freedom to landowners and tenants to enter into tenancy contracts not contrary to laws. Morals and public policy. These laws likewise provided for the compulsory arbitration of agrarian conflicts and suspended any action to eject tenants from the land they steal and live in. Dictated by Quezon Social Justice Program, the expropriation of landed estates and other big land holdings have started. Another key policy was the orderly settlement of virgin public agriculture lands, with focus on Mindanao under the National Land Settlement Administration. The Quezon administration began under 1935 Constitution, which declares the promotion of social justice to ensure the well-being and economic security of all people should be the concern of the estate in 1933. The Republic Act No. 4054 or the Rice Share Tenancy Act was passed. The act provided for a 50-50 sharing arrangement between landowners and tenants.
Thank you for the information, Angeline. Moving next is the accomplishments in land and agrarian reform of the administrations under the Third Republic. We have the reporter Jaren for more information.
Here are the accomplishments of the Third Republic in the land agrarian reform. Manuel Rojas, from 1946 to 48, the Republic Act No. 34 amends RA 4054 established a 70 to 30 sharing arrangement between tenant and the landlord. It provided that whoever shouldered the expenses of planting and harvesting and provided the work animals will be entitled to 70% of the harvest. It also reduced the interest on landowner loans to tenants no more than 6% instead of 10%. Elpidio Quirino, Republic Act No. 1199, the Agricultural Tenancy Act provided security of tenure for tenants. It also granted tenants the choice of shifting from shared tenancy to leasehold. It also created the course of agrarian management. Republic Act No. 1400, the Land Reform Act provided for the acquisition of large tenanted rice and corn lands over 200 hectares if owned by individuals, and 600 hectares if owned by corporations. Usdado Macapagal, from 1961 to 1965, under the Macapagal administration, the Republic Act No. 3844, otherwise known as the Agricultural Land Reform Code, was enacted. It abolished shared tenancy, institutionalized leasehold, invested rights of preemption and redemption for tenant farmers, provided for administrative machinery for implementation, institutionalized a judicial system of agrarian cases, incorporated extension, marketing, and supervised credit system of services to farmer beneficiaries.
Thank you, Jaren, for giving us more details of this topic. Moving on to the next news is the Presidential Decree PD 27. We have a reporter, Chris Raven, for more details behind this decree.
Under the Marcos administration, the following were accomplished in Republic Act No. 6389, Institute Code of Agrarian Reform, and created the Department of Agrarian Reform. Presidential Decree No. 2 placed the whole country under the Land Reform Program. Presidential Decree No. 27 restricted land reform scope to tenanted rice and corn land. On October 21, 1972, a month after the proclamation of martial law, President Marcos issued PD 27 with the main goal of emancipating farmers from the bondage of the soil. The decree, there is no more leasehold in tenanted rice and corn land. The teller automatically becomes the amortizing the owner of the land in years. Two aspects of land distribution. Number one is determination of the land to be transferred. Rice and corn areas were selected because they were the areas of early reforms because of social unrest associated with the rice tenancy. Number two, financing. The decree solved the problem of financing by fixing the value of land at the relatively modest rate and directing compensation that may be paid directly by the tenant to the landowner or converted into three-way agreement coverage of PD 27 on private tenant agricultural land devoted to rice and corn in excess of 7 hectares. Priorities of coverage shall be large than 24 hectares, less than 24 but not below transferred to their tenant if determined by the DAR to be absentee farmer with source of income other than their holdings. Letter of Instruction 474, October 21, 1976, provides that tenant areas of 7 hectares or less will be placed under PD 27 if the owner own other agricultural lands not devoted to rice and corn or other lands used for residential, industrial, or other urban purposes from which they receive adequate income to support themselves and their families.
Thank you, Chris Raven, for enlightening us about the Presidential Decree PD 27. For our last headlines on today's news, we have the achievements of Cory Aquino on agrarian reform. We have the reporter with us in this area. Christian, please kindly inform us.
Republic Act RA 6657. So, accordingly, the centerpiece of the Cory Aquino administration was the launching of the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program by virtue of Proclamation 131 and Executive Order by 229, which was signed by President Cory Aquino on July 22, 1987. The latter provided the mechanism needed initially to implement the CARP. The implementations of the CARP is supported into law by the enactment of Republic Act 6657, otherwise known as the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law, which was signed by President Aquino on June 10, 1988. Thus, all matters involving the implementation of agrarian reform the are governed by the said Act. Existing laws such as RA 3844 is amended PD by 27 and other laws. Consistent with the Act shall have only supplementary effect. Executive Order Number 129A provided for the strengthening of the DAR as leaded agency responsibility for the implementation of the CARP. The Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law, otherwise known as RA 6657, emerged nearly after a year of debates, pressure demonstration, and deadlocks between interest groups. President Aquino signed it on June 10, 1988, and it became effective on June 15, 1980. Since the various measures were adopted to facilitate CARP implementation, such as the formulation of implementing guidelines, institutionalization of implementing and coordinating mechanism. So, information, dissemination, and initial registration of lands, landowners, and farmer beneficiaries to strengthen CARP and speed up its implementations. President Aquino issued in June 1990 three key executive orders. So for the first one is Executive Order number 405, vested in the Land Bank of the Philippines the primary responsibility for land valuation. So for the second one is Executive Order number 406. So emphasize the CARP is central of the government's efforts to hasten countryside agro-industrial development and directed the implementing agency to align their respective programs and projects with the CARP. Created CARP implementing teams from the national to the municipal levels and identified and gave priority to 24 strategic operating provinces, so in short SOP, where the bulk of CARP workload lies without prejudice to the program. Implementation in other provinces of the country. So for the third one is Executive Order number 407, directed all government instrumentalities including financial, institutionals, and corporations to turn over to DAR all land suitable for agriculture for coverage under CARP. Furthermore, the 1987's Constitutional, which was ratified on February 2, 1987, contains several provisions dealing with agrarian reform.
The achievements of the Cory Aquino administration on agrarian reform
1987 Constitution, Art 2, Section 21, the state shall promote comprehensive rural development and agrarian reform. For the next one is Proclamation number 131 institutionalized the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program, CARP, and Agrarian Reform Fund, in short is ARRF. It covers all agricultural lands regardless of tenurial arrangement and commodity produce. All public and private agricultural lands and other lands of the public domain suitable to agriculture. Executive Order number 129A reorganized, streamlined, and expanded power and operation of DAR. Executive Order number 228 declared full ownership to qualified farmer beneficiaries covered by PD 27. It also provides for the manner of payment by the farmer beneficiary and mode of compensation to the landowners. Executive Order number 229 provided mechanism for the implementation of CART, such as administrative procedures and mechanics for land registration, private land and acquisition, and mode of compensation to the landowners. And for the last one is Republic Act number 6657. Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law. It is an act institution a comprehensive agrarian reform program to promote social justice and industrialization, providing the mechanism for its implementation and for other purposes.
You have just heard the latest news around the world. Again, this is Balita at Kasaysayan News. News with no bias, news with no exception, delivering nothing but the truth. This has been Musica La Presa and Angelo Haniel, bringing you the latest news around the globe.
Thank you for being with us. Stay safe and have a good day.